Hi, my name is Javier Albornoz, and today we're going to be diving deeper into the user interface and the various options that you have in Pro Tools. So I have a Pro Tools session open here for purposes of being able to dive deeper into the different options that we have in Pro Tools. So the first thing we're going to look at is the file menu. And just like most software, you have all the create new, open, save functions. But I wanted to look at specifically the save copy in function. So this is a very important feature because what it does is allow you to save your Pro Tools session into a folder of your choosing as a self-contained group of folders where all those audio files that may not be living inside the same folder, maybe you added rather than converted or copied them when importing them into Pro Tools, or maybe it's a video file that is on an external hard drive. You want to be able to get all of those files into one place. If, say, for example, you were trying to send this material, this Pro Tools session to another user, and he's going to open it, he or she's going to open it on another computer. So you have all your usual settings related to the same kinds of things that you have when you create a new session. The bit depth, whether the files are interleaved or single mono files, the format, and the sample rate. But you also have these other options, whether you're going to actually copy those audio files so that they are copied into the one self-contained folder. Different options related to that, main playlist, whether you're going to copy all tracks or just selected tracks. And these options on the right are important because it chooses whether you want to bring along video files as well, but also the plugin settings folder and the fade settings folder are things that should also go along to the other user when you're trying to save them to somewhere else. This is also obviously useful for backups of your session, so everything's all in the same place. So I'm going to cancel that, and we're going to move along back to the file menu where you have, also very important here, is the bounce to. This is how you're going to export your audio. So for example, if I wanted to export this and I selected these files, you see that it shows the selection along the length of the timeline that's the same length of the files I selected. And if you look at your transport bar, it's going to show you the start, end, and length of your selection. So right now we would be exporting 35.700 seconds of audio. So if I were to go now to bounce to disk, this is where you're going to see the options related to exporting or bouncing. Your file name, choosing the directory to where you're saving, whether you are doing an offline or online bounce, where the difference would be online. It would actually, if I uncheck this box, play as the playback happens, the export happens, and you actually hear the playback of the file. Whereas offline, it's going to do the processing offline, and it could speed up the export 2, 3, 4, even 5 times the length. So in a 35-second file, that's not a big deal. But in a long, maybe hour-long export of a very long video, it will speed up the export. The other options that you have are what output am I going to choose in my audio interface or sound card on your computer, as well as being able to choose the file type, interleaved or mono, multiple mono summed, where it's adding the two channels, the bit depth and sample rate. And you can also export an MP3 along with your .wav or .aiff. Another option that is very helpful would be whether you want to import your bounced file back into Pro Tools after you have exported the file. So you can choose for it to come right back into the session, even right back in as a track right below the audio that you just exported. So we'll hit cancel there, go back to file, and bounce to, because another great option here is to bounce to QuickTime. Now, right now I'm not working with a video file, but if I were, this is a very convenient option to be able to just export the video you're working with along with the audio that you've been working with. Now, all the same options exist here, pretty much the same as they do when you're exporting audio. So, as far as import, which is also obviously something you'll use very often, you do have various file types, whether you're importing audio files, MIDI files, video files. You can even do session data, where you can choose another Pro Tools session and actually select the different tracks, and it'll import them right into your session with all the audio data, MIDI data, automation, anything that is part of that track will come along with it. So it's a great way to be able to pull tracks from another session without having to rebuild them from scratch in your new session. So let's move along. The edit window is, again, as you would see in most software, related to copying, cutting. Here's where your undo and redo options are, but also you're going to have your fades menu here where you can start and delete, create fades. But also don't forget that you do have those tools when you're working with your audio. When you zoom in, and we already have fades created, so we're actually just going to move them here, but you can create fades quicker when you're actually zooming in and using your tool, as you can see right here, where I can just create that fade rather than going to the edit menu. So next we're going to have various view options here that are really great for customizing your edit and mix window. So some of the things that you're seeing here in your edit window, I have already checked off in view. So I can see my insert effects column here along with send effects and my IO. But we do have several other things that we can add. There's comments, mic preamps, instruments, more insert and send effects slots. And let's see what it looks like when I add, for example, comments. So you get here a box where you can actually type text and you can make notes to yourself. And that's very useful when you are working with several takes of dialogue, for example, or really anything you can imagine where it might be great to give yourself some notes. So the same thing applies to your mixer window. If you go back to view, you actually do have the same kinds of options under mix window views, where you can choose whether you're seeing your inserts, how many, your sends, and similar options like comments. So if I go here and I bring up my mix window and extend it so we can see the rest, you can see inserts and sends are there. And if I go, I can actually add, for example, more inserts. My A through E, you get 5 insert slots. You can add another 5 with F through J. Now, something else related to your mix window is this narrow mix, which is very useful when you've got a lot of tracks going and you really just want to be able to fit more on the screen. So I'm going to uncheck that and get them back to normal. So let's move along to the track menu. What you've got here at the top is very important. It is your adding tracks option, new. So this is where you can add various types of tracks, audio tracks, aux input, master fader, and all of those different options. You can check the plus so that you can create different types of tracks rather than just hitting new again and adding. You can keep adding more options so you can really just build your session in one shot if you wanted to. So the other very important thing I wanted to point out here is the create a click track. This actually doesn't exist within your create new track option. You have to create it separately by going there and creating a click track. So This is going to be your metronome click when you're trying to record any musical material, and you can actually open up the plugin for your click and customize the subdivision, even the sound of the click, and of course the tempo is going to be based off of the tempo of your track, which right now is at 120 beats per minute. Great, so let's move along to our next option I wanted to look at, which is the events menu, where you do have several time-related options that are very useful that you can apply to different events. So under time operations, this is where you can add or cut time, change the meter, and even move your song start. So a lot of these things get pretty in-depth into working with music and audio, but you will end up needing to use them one day. Tempo operations are related to your tempo bar on your timeline, where you can apply different, as you see here, you can apply different curves or even scale the tempo depending on how you're trying to manipulate your tempo. Under event operations, these are all related to working with MIDI. And here you can see is where you're going to quantize, change velocity, and apply all these different options that are very useful when manipulating your MIDI data. Another thing I wanted to point out here, which is great, is the Beat Detective option in Pro Tools, where you can actually extract a tempo from an audio file. For example, if you have a loop that you're working with and you would like to extract the tempo, so you can actually create a click track or a tempo track so you can compose to the tempo of that audio track, even if it's not a constant tempo and it does change throughout. The next thing we're going to look at is your audio suite dropdown, and this is essentially where you're going to see all the different plugins that you have, and they're separated by categories. As you can see, EQ, dynamics, pitch shift, you have your instruments. So whatever VST or other type of plugin that you might have loaded onto your system. Now, this is the same list that you would see if I go here and I create an insert effect. You can see that we have the same categories and the same list, but in the audio suite, you can actually directly apply these plugin effects to an event that you might have selected in your edit window. So we'll move on now to options. And options, you have a lot of things related to playback and recording. One very important one is whether you are recording destructively or non-destructively. So if we were to record and loop, rather than doing creating another take, if destructive recording is selected, you are going to overwrite whatever you previously recorded. So it's important to note how this option is selected when you are recording. Now, if we move along to setup, this is important related to your audio engine and your I/O settings, depending on if you're using an audio interface or it's just a built-in sound card. So the other important thing here is session, where if you're working with video, it's important to note that your timecode rate, this is something that's going to come up when you import video at different frame rates. You do have to make sure that your frame rate selected here matches the video that you're working with. And Pro Tools will notify you on the video track by highlighting in red the frame rate when you don't have a matching session frame rate with your imported video. Let's move on to the window dropdown. And here in the window dropdown, you're going to see a list of different window options that you can bring up, including your transport bar, which looks very similar to the transport bar you do have at the top of your edit window that will always stay there. But here you have a few more options related to recording: pre-roll, post-roll, and fade-in recording. So let's go back here to the window menu. This is where you'll also pull up whether you're seeing your edit and or your mix window, and right now we have them positioned both at the same time on the screen, but here you will be able to toggle back and forth, or if you close one of them, this is how you can bring them back up. Also, if you do have video loaded into your session, this wouldn't be grayed out and you would be able to pull up the video and actually view the video. So that's obviously very useful. So those are the main features that you can access up here along the top of your Pro Tools application window. But of course, there's a lot there that you can really dig into as you need to find them. But definitely don't overlook your help here. It's searchable, and also a great resource is your Pro Tools shortcuts. This will pull up a PDF file where you can find all the different shortcuts that make it quicker to access a lot of these features in Pro Tools.